tiny flats.
Yeah.
And we know it's a lot of information. We're going to leave your city manager with some information, and we'll take questions by email or phone. We'll make sure you have our phone number and email, and we can keep answering.
I have a question, and I just want to be sure I'm clear. So we're talking about a community land trust. Are we talking about neighborhood groups, all neighborhood groups, maybe, say from every neighborhood, all down neighborhood, they want to be a part of this? So would it all come under this one organization and have one board, or does each community organization create
Well, I think that's up to the neighborhood association. So I think, so some neighborhood associations might want to create a 501c3. We were looking at it as an umbrella relationship where we had certain services that we could be of assistance to the neighborhood associations so that they could do houses and we could help advise on that. But I think that would be up to the neighborhood association.
Envision a legal role, be an attorney that you could go to across the neighborhood association, so you wouldn't be incurring that cost individually and various services like that.
How will this go forward now in terms of what everybody's here, how they feel about this, or how will it go forward now in terms of the decision-making? We're gonna try this, or we're gonna, it sounds like there's still room to push things around a little bit, and it's not set in stone. But what's the process now? The public meetings, and then,
Well, great question. So once we receive all of the feedback and all the research that has been done by the capstone students, then we would model what that would look like, and then we would bring it to the city council with recommendations. They in turn may ask for additional feedback, but eventually it's the council that would take the vote to allow this to be so.
How is the board existing with 7 homeowners if you haven't started the program?
Yeah, go back to that slide. I had a little footnote on that that I probably missed when I talked about it. You wouldn't have those, so you could, because you would have these staggered terms, you could have more neighborhood associations when you start and have them roll off as people start buying, so that you add those. But yeah, I put a little, you've got a rotation and turnover, and so since you're not gonna have homeowners at the beginning, you want some people close by in that role, but then have them turn over as people buy into it.
So you still have 21 people in the beginning?
You could, or it could start with less than 21, and you could hold some spaces open and add those in.
Okay. And how you started?
How do you start it?
Yeah, how do you start as far as the CLT, as far as the contributions that's coming from the city, and as far as, like you say, the officers of the employees of the land trust?
Yeah, so go back to that nonprofit. So we, to set up a nonprofit so that the city has something to transfer funds to or transfer land or anybody else does, you have to set up that nonprofit entity. And when you go to the Secretary of State's office to set that up, you have to have at least 3 incorporators. So 3 of those board members take on that first responsibility of setting it up. And then you start to, oh, I'm sorry, go down a little bit. Keep going. Right up there. Got one more back. Right there. So yeah, so the requirement with the Secretary of State's 3 incorporators. So you'd start with these 3, start putting those documents together, and then start filling out the board. But that's that's the minimum at the Secretary of State's office.
Okay, I understand what you're saying with that. My question is that the contributions that you receive from the city of Roger Mount, you can go through as far as what you're receiving from the city, as far as the land, as far as the monies or anything like that.
Right, you can't do any of that until this entity is set up.
Right.
And then once it's set up and it's got a board and bylaws and it's been incorporated properly and you've turned in this information to the IRS, then you can say to the city, okay, now we're ready for you to transfer it.
But surely you know what you're gonna receive before you go through all this process.
No, I don't. I mean,
So I can maybe
Okay.
help with that just a little bit. So remember, I guess it's been over a month ago, when the city received notification of the ARP funds, the American Rescue Plan funds. One of the first recommendations that I made to the council, and they supported that, was to set aside $3 million for housing out of $11.7 million that we received. And of that $3 million is $1 million that is dedicated to the community link. So we have funds available should we move forward with this to help with that. In terms of land, we haven't gotten quite that far. But certainly, there are properties, that the city does own that may, in fact, be of interest to start the whole home ownership piece of it. So we do have startup money, if you will, and hopefully those funds can be leveraged with other corporations, banks, the Golden Leaf Foundation, just a number of PNC, which is the city's bank, and it's certainly a big bank here in Rocky Mount. Got a little something to get started.
And I would like to see also the formula that we use as far as the taxes for the people that own the homes, because they will be paying taxes on the land.
they want to pay
They're
taxes on
paying
that.
taxes just on the house.
Right.
So I'd like to see as far as a formula for that before, we go through all this process as far as what needs to be done.
Yeah,
CLT.
their taxes would be at the same rate the city sets. They just would be paying taxes on just the house, not the land.
Not just the-
It would be separate, unless the board acquired capital and wanted to, offer some sort of rebate to homeowner. I mean, there's all kinds of financial tools the land trust can use, but basically the tax would be the tax rate of the city.
You also mentioned as far as they would lease the land from CLT. So, why would they have to lease the land if they're not being charged, not owning the land?
They would be leasing the land from the land trust. So the land trust would own that land, and then it would say, our agreement's going to be $1 a year every year, and that would be built into their mortgage. But the land trust is still going to be responsible for the land, so depending on what that formula looks like as to what they have to take care of, it's going to be there, and it's not going to be less than $1, because that's kind of the standard for a contractual arrangement.
Okay, so out of the 255 land trusts, is that an amount that they normally charge is $1?
It's all over the place. It depends.
Can you give us a range as far as?
Oh, I mean, there's some that it's $1 a year. There's some where they provide all sorts of improvements like landscaping, regular monthly maintenance, mowing the grass, where depending on where it is, it could be $25 a month or it could be $200 a month. It's all over the place.
From the property that's in DC, she said she's paying like $1,100 a month, and $200 is going into savings for her, is that what she said?
Yes, they set up a special savings account for homeowners to have for major repairs, improvements that they want to make. They teamed up with a credit union, and if the homeowner puts $200 in, the credit union matches it, and then that person has a savings account built in. So there's all kinds of programs you can build in.
So, but the programs pretty much are decided by the board of directors in each situation.
Yeah, you want a board that's creative and connected and can think of all of these types of training and program to help build value for those people in the land trust.
So earlier, when you were talking about appears to be on the property that the trust is selling, and they'll decide what degree of improvement will be made and raise money to make those improvements?
No, that's going to be the homeowners. Well, again, this is going to be subject to how the operations are set up of the land trust. But for the most part, it's going to be, you own the house, you decide to sell it. It's just like any other real estate transaction. You're going to sell it, but the agreement with the land trust is going to be, you know, these income requirements of the homeowners that come in, and the land trust keeps the land. So you're going to make the improvements or not, and the price is going to be based on that. Now, the land trust could come in and say, yes, we're going to do X, Y, and Z before the next person comes in, but those are all going to be decisions that board has to make.
So, and I guess what I'm getting at is if, owners do not take care of their property and leave them negative terms, then the property is in decline.
Right, there's going to have to be provisions for that.
So-
Yes.
So there will also be like a board decision as to how they will handle.
Yes. And that's going to be in combination with the bank that does the mortgage instrument as well. The same thing as if someone defaults on their mortgage, like a regular property, that's going to have to be built into those operations as well.
So in any of these communities,
Excuse me, we can't have the dialogue between the two of you. We're missing part of it. We're some of the missing part of it.
I have one more question.
Thank you.
And so, well, I can stand up. It's my last question, so close to the mic. Can you hear me now? I'm back.
I'll recap it for you. Okay.
Well, what I was getting at was housing covenants, and is that something that these community land trusts, they use that in some situations?
Yeah, there's some land trusts that have covenants built in. So recap is worrying about properties in decline, how the land trust is going to retain value. That's why it's so important that we have these students looking at best practices, because they're going to collect all of these details from different land trusts so that you can make a good decision on which way we should go. Lots of decisions, yes.
Yes, ma'am, just one quick question. So once the city council decides to go forward with this, and you talked about the 3 incorporators, I think it needs to be clear those incorporators are responsible for the initial fees that go through the IRS, unless they have some sponsorship. They're also responsible for laying out the bylaws. So how would those first 3 incorporators be decided? And then the board training for the remainder of those that will come on, how would that be decided to get started? You know, we talk a lot about what it's gonna look like, but there's a lot more to it than just getting started.
Right. Well, I would hope that we have the promise of funds, so if those incorporators do have to pay those initial fees, that they get reimbursed for it. So that would be the first thing. They wouldn't be stuck with that for life. They'd get reimbursed. I think that's a conversation that we have to have with the council as to how to go about, and you don't have to just pick, you need at least 3. It could be we go ahead and have 21. So I don't want to leave you with the impression, that's just the minimum required from the Secretary of State. So I think we'll have to work with the city council about what's a good practice based on these other land trusts, is how you start up that first board and hold those elections and choose people. Does that make sense?
So the reason we want to do this, forget the add-ons, because it sounds like that's something that, you know, will come along once the thing is off the ground and successful. So the reason we want to do this is the land trust provides us the expertise that, you know, I wouldn't have about the bank or that's one of the rationales for doing this, is because they then will step in and be the leadership that directs us how we're going to buy this house, or how, is that the main benefit for
Well,
the community?
So I'm going to answer this as a former Federal Reserve person who saw a lot of land trusts and helped fund them. So Typically, communities there's lots of options when it comes to affordable housing and workforce housing. The reason a lot of communities choose to go this direction is because it is a community-owned and operated entity that is going to help preserve housing, halt or slow down gentrification, and keep the native population in their city if they choose to. So that's typically why cities and communities choose to do this. I feel like I'm on a dissertation, but I think Jim should stand up here with me for a little while.